Well, I suppose without further ado, here we are on another episode of Active Breath, the MVM Miller Voice Method podcast. You've heard a few voices so far. My name is Kyle Cameron. I'm one of our co-hosts. My other co-host is also here. His name is
Scott Miller.
Scott Miller. And we have two beautiful guests today, two returning guests. This is our first four-way chat, which will be fun. We have with us JP. Say hello, JP.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Roz, our wonderful producer and also MVM certification student. Hi, Roz.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited for the first Active Breath four-way ladder match for the title. This is going to get really interesting, and I promise to be merciless.
Yeah, that's what we hope for. Reason for the season, huh? I guess that's where we start. The reason for the season is it's born of a pre-existing relationship between JP and Roz, which was well underway by the time Roz enrolled in the certification program. Would one of you like to tell us about that relationship? Where did you two meet and under what circumstances?
Why don't you start us off, Roz?
Yeah, totally. Oh my God, such a storied history now. I was looking for a gender-affirming voice coach. I had worked with a few different schools of thought, I'll say, for gender-affirming voice coaching. And then through the Chicago Women's Health Center, I found JP, reached out, got set up, and then it worked. I found that this method worked really well for me. The MVM informed approach to gender affirming voice coaching, I'll say, and maybe JP can say that better in a second. But I kind of the reason I enrolled in the Miller Voice Method teacher certificate was just because through working with JP for gender affirming voice coaching, I fell in love with the work. Wanted to do more of it, wanted to go deeper in, and so a couple steps down the road later, and now we're all podcasting together.
Woohoo!
Love that.
I'm curious what grabbed you about it.
I think it was a combination of a few different things for me. And the first was that I had tried a bunch of other approaches to gender affirming voice coaching, and all of them left me feeling either physically sore in my voice after a while of talking, or kind of winding up with a voice that felt creaky and hollow and not something lived in. So I think that's one of the big ones, but also like I just really, the anatomy of the work, the history, other applications. Oh my God, what's JP can remember the title of the book that we worked from for a long time, because I really loved that book. Was it Patricia Fletcher's book?
Oh, yes.
But
that's right.
Freeing the Voice or something like that?
Classically Speaking by my old teacher, Pat Fletcher, yeah.
Wow.
I love Classically Speaking, such a good voice. And that and Freeing Shakespeare's Voice. So like I started reading about all this voice coaching stuff, and like it just really clicked with me.
What is gender affirming coaching?
None of your business.
JP, do you want to take that one?
It's a big phrase.
Casually shirking responsibility for the big ones.
Someone unpack that phrase for me?
Yeah, sure. So if the voice that's coming through your body is not congruent, nor does it align with the voice that you hear in your dreams, then gender-affirming voice coaching is to get those two things in alignment. So in a sense, to close the gap between the intention and the voice that comes through this current state and the voice that you've always heard since you were as little as you can remember in your dreams.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. Is that your experience, Roz?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much spot on what it is. It's just aligning this kind of lack of continuity between the voice that I've just kind of had for the longest time and the gendered presentation I'm after is, I guess, how I'd present it.
Yeah, and connecting that to, a lot of our audience is voice teachers or actors or have some kind of experience with that in a lot of cases. The similarities with maybe, let's say, a first-year grad student who is learning their voice. Some teacher might call it, yeah, that first year is all about breaking down tension and revealing your quote unquote authentic voice. And that's no judgment of that process or the use of the word authentic. That's to say, well, the difference here is that voice that's coming out of their bodies typically pretty darn close to it's a slightly more tense version of the voice they've
I see
always
what you mean. Yeah.
heard and seen in their dreams. Whereas we can talk about voices that are quite distant from what's coming out of their body at that current attempt.
Interesting. Yeah, sometimes with my students, I use the phrase, I want to hear the sound of the inside of your body, because there's something about when you take all of that tension away, or as much of it as you can, the excess tension, what you're left with is the natural sound that your resonating chambers, your sinuses, your throat, your all of these places that our sound is built and amplified and picks up overtones. That sort of quote unquote authentic sound is what comes out, and that's often what we're after. But it's interesting to think that that may still be totally incongruous with what I'm looking for or dreaming of. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that voice you're talking about, the end of releasing all those tensions, could be incredibly dysphoric to somebody.
Yeah.
So we feel like it's the arrival spot at the end of a first year of training, and it could be a really confusing, dysphoric place for someone else.
Yeah.
JP, how do you work with the phenomenon that the voice that I hear coming out of myself is different than the voice that you hear me making for all of us? And how do you, if you're in the business of alignment, in some regards, how does alignment happen when the speaker is hearing a different voice than the listener is?
Yeah, it's a great question. So everything, of course, as always, that's coming out of my mouth right now, I'm going to say with incredible confidence, and which means it's also completely full of shit, and I'm learning every day. So here we go. There is a part of voice training that gets skipped a lot, I've found, in gender-affirming voice work, which is a client will come to me and say, and this is, I'm sorry, the long road, Scott, to answer your question, but I feel like it does require a longer road.
I love the long. I love the long road.
It's a long form medium.
But mind you, my long roads are packed with neurodivergence. So everyone, good luck. So this long road is, they come to me and they say, okay, for example, I want to sound more femme. So this is a trans femme person. Their voice to the outside ear sounds more quote unquote masculine, and they want to sound more femme. Okay, great. So they might have even an example of a famous person or someone they look up to that has a voice similar to the one they're after. And these are all beautiful things, right? The issue is that then the first step becomes, if we're not careful, going, great, here are some ways to make your voice go up in pitch so that you sound more femme. And we have a lot of questions to answer and a lot of exploring to do before we get to that point. Because society at large has unknowingly, unconsciously most of the time, but also consciously, forced a kind of identity category conversation where everyone's looking to put each other into a broad bucket. So, okay, great. You sound like that. Therefore, you are male, which happens in a millisecond. We are gendered literally in a millisecond of hearing someone's voice. And that we love because then we can categorize somebody, which feels safe and warm because now I know what to do with that. So, as we know, there are a ton of different voices that one might identify as feminine. So where do we begin with that? I want to sound more femme. Oh gosh. Well, what's femme sound like?
Right.
So we ask that question. There's a lot, and that takes time to unpack what they mean by femme in this context. Maybe they have some examples that helps us. But the issue here is because society has forced a kind of reductive nature to what we think of identity and voice, for the reasons we just discussed, people start to forget actually what their dream even sounded like.
Oh, wow.
because years have gone by trying to serve other masters of society of what this voice needs to be for others, including me. And before you know it, I forgot. I went to this incredible art exhibit. I will never forget. Maybe the most powerful and transformative art experience I've ever had. I went to Mass MoCA about a year ago, which is a modern art museum in Western Mass near where I used to live. And Jeffrey Gibson is this incredible queer artist. And they had this massive, massive room with clothing items that were abstract and beautiful colors and some neon and some darkness and shadows in the corner of the room. And they had TVs everywhere hanging from this, incredibly high ceiling. And from those TVs, they're looping that Two-Spirit documentary, I think it's from the early 90s, which interviewed and investigated all of these indigenous people in the San Francisco Bay Area about, in their tribe, in their history, it's assumed that you have multiple spirits, what we might try to refer to as gender. But there's these multiple spirits within you. And when you turn, let's say, kind of a coming of age 13, you are given that choice yourself. The tribe doesn't tell you. You make the choice. I would like to do this for the tribe, which might be basket weaving, which might be, oh no, I do want a spear. I want to go hunt and all these other things. But that person chooses what actions seem to align with their inner desires and what they, all that stuff. And I'm sitting there watching that documentary. I'm taking in the art exhibit. And then I walk by this wall with this quote. And it's something that I felt intuitively for a long time and led me to gender-affirming voice training. But it wasn't until I saw this quote that I went, yep, that's it. And I think the quote is, sometimes your body changes and you don't remember your dreams. So sometimes your body changes and you don't remember your dreams. And I took that to mean, as my body has evolved, as my anatomy and this thing has evolved on its own, I then start to put that body up against societal norms. I start to assimilate for survival. And I actually forget how I used to dream of myself when I was little, of what I wanted my body to look like, what I wanted my voice to sound like. So a big part of gender-affirming voice work is giving the time and space to let someone play around in the sandbox and go, oh yeah, I thought I wanted to sound more femme in this way. But the more we explore these exercises, I forgot that what really feels euphoric to me is this kind of whatever expression. And that's, oh my God, I'm getting flashbacks of how I wanted to sound and how I have always sounded in my dreams. Let's work in that direction. But you have to give someone the time and space to reconnect with that dream. So, Scott, to your question, I'm not sure. All I know is that like what they hear on the outside, even in recording, I think is a part of the external pressures that become less relevant when they instinctually connect to the dream.
Do you use recording technology to play the person back what they hear in the world or what we hear in the world?
That's of the devil. Roz?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that is definitely a part of this, because if you can hear yourself speaking, you can be a bit more informed about your decisions that you're making as far as your own voice training. You know, listening to yourself on recording sucks sometimes, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you're falling short of your goals. But it is a really good way to have like a concrete listening back, especially if it's kind of informed by, let's say you're doing an exercise on like voice placement and you're recording yourself and you're like, okay, I'm going to try like a middle voice placement, and you're recording and you're like, ooh, that's trash. I never want to hear her again. And so now you can be like, okay, maybe that voice placement sucks for me and I want to try something different. So, yeah. Or what you do is you record hundreds of hours of podcasting,
right?
And you have
exactly.
a library of your own sins to go revisit. So there's that too.
Roz, how do you? How does how do the exercises or the actual facility of doings in a session, in a voice session, when you're working with JP, how skillful do you feel like you can get at, doing something with your voice and getting it pretty close to the thing that you're hearing in the recording?
Yeah, I think that's a complicated question, because I think it would depend on each individual person in their own like gender-affirming voice coaching experience. Like you need to get as skillful as you need to be to achieve the voice that is affirming for you, the voice that you're after. And some people might find that they need a lot more detailed work in order to land on something precise. Other people might be really happy with some like basic adjustments that are super easy to go after for them. So I think that would be a quick and rough answer to that question.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed exploring the nuance, so I'm on maybe the deeper end of it.
Yeah. How much does confidence play in that? I mean, as your confidence grows in the ability to execute an exercise or develop your ear or such, how does that relate to your personal progress?
Ooh, that's really interesting, because I think that here's where we see like some overlap, but also some distinction with like, this grows out of voice training for the stage, right? Mm-hmm. Which is technically similar, but also like fundamentally so distinct. Mm-hmm. And, like I had a lot of confidence in my voice prior to the transition and seeking out gender-affirming voice care. And so like the confidence thing was never really the issue for me, like being able to just try stuff and do it, like, okay, fine. But what was a real roadblocker is just the dysphoria, just hearing the wrong voice, just being misgendered by the sound of my voice. Mm-hmm. So there's, I guess, a little bit of distinction there. It's not quite like confidence and stage fright, and it's more of like something a bit more primal, something a bit more to like the lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me step back on that to say, I would imagine most people know what it feels like to be in an environment where you're a little more cautious than other environments. And in doing so, we forget that, breathing and speech and all of the making sound, phonating is a breath and muscular autonomic world. And it's governed by...
Can you say what that word means real quick?
Yeah. It's like, for instance, fight or flight is a kind of,
okay.
These things happen without us meaning for them to have, like, we don't have to consciously go do this. It happens. Mm-hmm. So fight or flight happens, everything from like a lot of our bodily functions, even sexual arousal, these things that we don't have, like that kind of just happen, right? So in that autonomic world, we are living, especially nowadays, in all the ways, our cortisol levels are high all the time. And now just imagine in the voice, speech, and breath world, where a student comes into you in that autonomic spike of cortisol and adrenaline always pumping, because every moment, for some, not all, for some, opening their mouth to make sound can be the difference today in getting hired, getting fired, losing relationships, losing family, getting beat up, getting assaulted, like high stakes. So then they come into you for all the reasons, and they're operating from that nervous system, which now, autonomic system, has now lifted the larynx, squeezing the larynx. The breath is barely moving. So the confidence question of Scott's is interesting, because these little wins are huge for confidence, because they're coming in already sometimes very tight and on alert. So it makes the work, I don't know if challenging is the right word, like more challenging than other kinds of clients. But definitely that is the reality in the room that has to be acknowledged in some way. Otherwise, the sessions won't be very efficient.
Oh yeah. Gender-affirming voice coaching can be quite literally life and death.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Roz, if you would be willing to talk about some of the approaches that you tried that didn't work, like what sorts of things were going on that felt like they were, blocking you or just not giving you a satisfactory result.
Yeah, and I think I would just want to caveat this too with like, your mileage may vary. You know, like obviously I'm a supporter of like the way JP and I do the voice coaching,
Right.
but if someone's listening to this and they're like, wow, the techniques my speech therapist taught me were all I ever needed and I feel amazing, like I don't want
course.
to give you like more dysphoria brainworms or anything. Like if you've got it, babe, you've got it. But yeah, no, I did like, and this also might be because like I use my voice for my career, you know, podcasting and
exactly.
stuff. Like I have to be able to speak for like, you know, there are days where I'm podcasting for like 10 hours a day. You know, so I have to speak in a voice that is satisfying to me, that gets the right gendered perceptions for an extended period of time. But, you know, like I tried like working with speech therapists, which is very technical, very clinical, very focused on pitch. I've tried other schools of thought when it comes to gender-affirming voice coaching. There's a lot of stuff available on YouTube. Yeah, none of them left me with either the toolkit that I felt that I needed to kind of like grow and cultivate my voice away from a voice coach, like once we stop having sessions. And I also felt that these tools left me with a lot of strain in my voice. And I couldn't even articulate that at the time. Like if you would have asked me, I wouldn't have been able to say like, I would have been like, oh, my voice is like squeaky and I get tired really quickly. I can't hold it for as long as I need to. You know, but now looking back at it, I'm like, oh, I had tons of strain, tons of problem with my breath. Like it was a very tight and held, intense voice. But I have picked up a lot of tools along the way. There's a lot of like eclectic things that go into the toolkit.
Yeah, and Roz had a bit of a cheat code, but all clients find their ways. But Roz did have a background with the voice and some intuition there that was already developed. So to be able to go, oh, that's right. When I'm trying to reduce chest resonance, I can feel how I used to do that by squeezing my larynx, of which to reduce that chest resonance. So now I get the result of a voice that has less chest resonance, but it's super constricted. So technically higher, technically less of that undertone chest resonance vibe. And yet now there's something that's ironically doesn't feel genuine to the speaker. It doesn't feel so genuine to the people surrounding that person. So that's, I think, a couple pieces that we explore that seem to be effective and helps a lot of our clients at Chicago Women's, which is the active breath. It's missing from a lot of the gender-affirming work out there, like, you know, basic active breath work. And then also that exploratory, hey, let's not just jump to the results of what you want, especially before you have fundamentals in place, because it feels like a mask on a mask.
Yeah. JP, I have a question.
Yeah, that is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ross.
Oh no, I was going to say the chest resonance thing is such a good example of what we're talking about in this part of the discussion, because that was something I would say I was resigned to having lost it as part of finding like an affirming, feminine sounding voice. I was like, okay, well, chest resonance, like, see you later. You were great to me for 30 odd years, but for the back half, we're gonna part ways. But then through working with JP, I found ways to, you know, like learning, you know, the MVM approach of like, okay, lower third, middle third, upper third, right? And then like, and then finding like, okay, I can kind of like move my chest resonance and have upper third resonance, right? Still keep that kind of like that little bit of a bassy undertone, that warmth that comes from the chest resonance,
Right.
while still going for a voice that's affirming for me. And that's something that I would have not been able to have had I not done the kind of voice coaching that we do.
JP, I have a question for you. So, you know, so much of our work is, like you said in the beginning, kind of deconstructing a lot of tension, a lot of unconscious habitual activity that leads to some sort of diminishment in resonance or diminishment in flexibility of pitch variation or volume variation or rate variation. And more often than not, you know, we all have, you know, minus training, we all have the voice that served us in the relationship or the identity that we perceive ourselves to be in holistically in life. And so, you know, a lot of what happens in our work is as the voice starts to shift and change, questions of one's personal identity invariably start to come up, and really quite unprovoked by us, of course, but it is kind of our number one identification with ourselves. Like we hear ourselves all the time, much more than we even see ourselves. So to go about and change the sound that I'm hearing myself make in the world that has perhaps served me really well on some level, and how that starts to right has and that starts to kind of vibrate with up against my sense of identity, and gender being a huge piece of identity. There's so I wonder how you've been able to think about that and how to navigate that, not only in gender affirming coaching, but in coaching overall, because it is a thing that we encounter.
A couple things. One thing comes to me, Scott, do you remember old school MVM work when we were exploring character work, where we would, and I can't remember how exactly this started, and you probably do because you have a mind like a steel trap. Mine's like a sieve. But do you remember our character brunches? Do you remember this?
Now I'm intrigued.
I love the way this sounds.
Oh my God. You don't remember
this.
character brunch? Oh my God, I'm so excited to talk about this. Okay. So character brunch, I'm sure you'll remember as I explain it. Remember, character brunches, we would take artists through a process of developing character over weeks, right? Of exploring voice in all the ways. You usually have
Yes.
Of course. How can you forget those mimosas? So,
well, we don't remember, so tell us.
Yeah. So you go through some fundamental voice work. So people have that. Then they start to explore a character. This could be like a literal character that they're playing in a play that they're prepping for, something just for class, or it can just be an isolated thing. Like, no, I just want to explore someone else's voice because there's so much to learn from that. To put a voice outside of yourself is a really beautifully safe thing to do. Like, let's just explore that person's voice because that has nothing to do with identity, right? That's just the technical skill of, what would it feel like to embody some aspects of that voice? So you do that. We go through this character training, some of the psychological investigation, some physical behavior, what kind of gestures do they make? What's their body posture like? Then what's their oral posture like? Everything, just how the tongue sits in the mouth, how the tongue makes a T as in Tom and a D as in dog. That's different for everybody. Where exactly it hits the ridge of the mouth, if it hits the ridge of the palate at all. So you explore these things, and then we go to brunch, meaning, and we all had our different iterations of this, but mine was, I would take them to this restaurant at a time in Chapel Hill called Breadman's, and I'd have 12 crazy ass actors all playing this fully fleshed out character, and I'd go and host a real estate brunch. One of those real estate pitches where I've paid you in a sense to come get a free brunch, and I'm going to pitch you on a real estate opportunity. But everyone's receiving my pitch in character. So we
as their
brunch,
character.
Right? We're all in character, including me. I'm the salesperson. So I'm pitching to them, they're receiving it, they're getting to know each other, they all have different needs and desires they want with this real estate potentiality, all the Ponzi schemes apply. So they're there, and then out of nowhere, usually things start to get tense, and I would escape the brunch and just leave all the students in the lurch, with no guidance. I would just leave, I just go home. I go back to my office. And
you set up a camera or something first?
So the best, of course, would be the next class where they'd come in and tell me what happened after I left. Once the leader, quote unquote, left. How did they decide to leave? With what kind of integrity did they leave? What was that like? And of course, I'd leave my credit card beforehand with the restaurant, so everything was paid for. But
nice.
I wanted to see them. Yeah. I expensed it. So I wanted to see them, deal with that and hear what their experiences were. So there's that. We have this Starbucks test, as we call it, where at one point, a gender-affirming client will, on their terms, of course, with a little encouragement from me, it's hey, this thing we've been working on, you don't know what this is going to do to you in this vacuum. It's a start, but we're in a vacuum right now. What happens when you go not to your local Starbucks, but to that other one a couple avenues over that you never go to, and order your drink. You order your drink, you order your pumpkin bread, but now you're going to do it with this voice you've worked very hard at, and see if it still feels euphoric. See if where you're at with your courage and confidence. What is that? How does that you resonate with your identity given that moment? But that's beautiful feedback then to bring in and say, yeah, it felt good in here, but for whatever reason, the way it was moving through my body out there was different. And I want to make this shift. Or, oh my gosh, this is just the beginning. I'm so excited. Let's keep digging just like this. Or, whatever the response will be. So, Scott, there's that of being able to take this, because again, the difference between an actor and this is an actor goes, oh gosh, this is so different and feels weird and feels strange. And that's not true for most gender-affirming clients. When they've experienced this voice after all the training and that alignment work is done, they're not like ostracized by it or felt strange in any way. They're like, oh my God, I'm finally hearing my voice for the first time.
That's interesting.
And we forget, not to belabor the point, but I know it's different, so everyone forgive the reference. But have you seen those YouTube videos? I can't believe I'm making a YouTube reference. Have you seen the YouTube videos where, my kids are going to love this, where someone who's never heard, they've been deaf their whole life for whatever reason, then they're given those implants and they hear their child for the first time. And their face just blows up and they're sobbing and the sheer joy and power. It's crazy to think about, but again, most people aren't musicians and singers. They come to this work with very little facility. So they've not been able to even toy. Let me breathe, start that over. They've been at home and they've not been able to actually even toy around with their voice the way that Kyle Cameron can do, the way I can do, because they don't have that facility. So they've never even gotten close to their voice. So then in a session or out at Starbucks or wherever, when they hear it, it's not like, oh God, that's really jarring. It's, I'm freaking home. Yes.
Yeah, that explains the difference between how often JP and Kyle, when you start to hear this at first gradual and then, one class, all of a sudden this sound comes out of a human that you haven't ever heard before for them. And you're so excited inside, maybe externally as well. And, and you look to their face to see if they're going to mimic the same kind of excitement. And they look a little terrified or they're like, really? They're very doubtful. I'm like, you didn't hear it? You didn't hear that? And then, you go to the class. Did you guys, what did you hear? And they're like, oh my God. Da, 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 da. And then you look back at the person and they're like, are you sure? I don't know. I think I heard something different. And I always wonder about that kind of primal first reaction and what that's about. But this makes a lot of sense, what you're saying, JP, in relationship to that,
It really is a question of degrees with our, second year acting students. It really is to me, it feels massively different what just came out of you. But for you, it might not be that different because on a Richter scale, it's not actually that different. But it sounds like for some of these folks, you're making a much bigger change. Potentially.
Or I don't know if it's bigger. Maybe it's just that you're running towards something as opposed to away from something on some level,
Yeah. I don't know, Roz, if you have anything to that.
Have any experiences of that you'd be willing to share or just a little response to what JP said? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a lot that I think is coming to mind right now. I think to kind of synthesize a lot of what we've been discussing in the last 15 to 20 minutes here, I'm always interested in kind of where things occur, socially, right? The situation has put together this wonderful idea of psychogeography, right? How the very geography of our world changes how we act and behave and think and feel. And I like to play with that idea and extend it. And so what's the psychogeography of a voice? Our voices occur in so many places, right? My voice right now is a series of biological apparati over which I have, I would say, a moderate amount of control. But, like this body was given to me by time and genetics, and I have, like a Resident Evil video game villain, seized control of my fate and reshaped a good portion of it. But, sometimes it's working against the grain. And then my voice is also an internal psychological phenomenon. The voice that I hear, right? Like I have my own relationship to that voice. And then as another layer on top of all of this, there's how everyone else hears my voice. Friends, family, strangers at coffee shops. And there can be, misalignments within those things. I could be totally satisfied with my voice. I could have great facility of control. But like, if I'm still getting misgendering out there in the world, that is a problem for me that I want to work through. Or, somebody else could be like, well, I don't give a fuck about that. I've got it nailed for me. My friends and family hear what they need to hear. Sure. Baristas be damned.
Right.
So there's like so many different ways of coming at this, which I think makes the work really, really exciting.
I'm looking at my, that's beautiful, Roz. I feel so grateful and lucky that I've met you. I really am. I'm really feeling it.
Aw, you too, JP.
Yeah, I've learned so much.
JP, you're the best.
It's very sweet.
I'm looking at a client. This is going to, of course, remain confidential, but there's a lot of voice nerds that are going to be listening to this, and I thought it might be interesting to bring up. Like this one client that I've been working with, we were at session 8. I do 45-minute sessions, and we were at session 8 when this person, for the first time, they were able to, through the first 7 sessions of laying the foundation, it was session 8 where they went, oh my gosh. They were able to send their voice and exist in a certain spectrum of pitch and operate there and express within it for, a handful of moments that were fully supported by the active breath. And it was that moment where you see them light up and they went, oh my God, there it was. And it can't sustain yet. That takes time. Not a lot more time, but that's how many sessions it took to get, for this person, for them to go. And you could feel the lightness and the excitement all at the same time into the room. Yeah, an incredible journey to watch.
How many sessions do you tend to do with people? I mean, I'm sure it varies, but like how long is what's the range look like?
I think for various reasons, I would say the vast majority of clients are 6 to 8 sessions, and then they'll go away and then come back. Because of the cadence of life, 6 to 8.
Sure.
Some of them for financial reasons. At Chicago Women's, no one's turned away for financial reasons. So people
That's great.
are asked to look at a matrix of finances to self-assess what you actually can afford, and you pay that, right? And for some, that's nothing, right? So yet there are reasons for money or time where they have multiple interests and they come and go. But I would say 6 to 8 sessions is the median, and the people that can and the ones that really drill down, I would say it's usually sessions around 12 to 16 where there's real fundamental changes. And I would say that the issue with this is most people, and I'm still working on this, trying to find ways to encourage habit stacking and practice stacking. So getting people to understand how to practice on their own without me is a huge goal of mine. I know a lot of us here at MVM, we want a student's autonomy. We don't want them wedded to us forever. And a lot of, I think, unconscious practices are built for the student to need the teacher. And we're trying to break that cycle. And I work hard at it. And yet there's some that still don't have that practice. It takes, 12, 14 sessions before they really develop that practice. And Roz, I mean, it's not about the amount of sessions, but Roz's commitment was incredible. I think we had worked together maybe close to 30 times, 30 sessions before Roz went into the Teacher Cert program.
What do you think held your attention that long, Roz? Do you think that's a natural curiosity, or is it something about this particular work?
Say it was my jokes.
You do have a tremendous
I think
amount of natural curiosity.
That is true. I'm a curious person by nature. So I think that played into it for me. And then I also think that, you know, to build on what JP is saying here, like that's also how many like sessions I needed to explore what I was looking to explore with somebody who knew how to guide me through these skills and these exercises, and to help set me up to then be able to continue to explore on my own. So that's just kind of, it's a combination of like, you know, a lot of our sessions later on, my sessions with JP were about working with classically speaking, like working through that text, you know, because I'm in love with like that kind of Royal Shakespeare Company way of pronouncing, right? That kind of precision, those Z's. And like, I wanted that as a way to color the gender of the voice that I'm working on. Right. So like we got really granular. We got really in detail with like a lot of exercises that most people maybe wouldn't be interested in. I mean, maybe they would if they had it as an opportunity. But yeah. So I think it's a combination of those things.
Yeah, the
And
weight
so
and pressure.
I'm curious about this sort of speech approach, the sort of articulational approach, and how that contributed to your experience of gender.
You want to speak more about that, Roz?
Yeah, totally. Asking me to say more. Oh no, what am I going to do? I think that is something that was just kind of like emerged as like an idiosyncratic quality of mine through doing the rest of the work, right? And when I say the work here, I mean the work of pursuing gender-affirming voice coaching as a student. Because I knew going into this that I wanted a higher pitch. I wanted a pitch that was within the like feminine pocket, right? Within that range. And then I knew that I also wanted to like work on all of the other qualities that color my voice. You know, all of those other things that add to the gendered perception, right? Because, and again, the research on this very new. It needs to be more in depth, but like roughly 70% of vocal perception is down to pitch. But then it's all the other qualities that color it that come in for like that 10-yard fight when pitch doesn't really get the gender of a voice across. Because there are cis men with high voices, there are cis women with very low-pitched voices, and there's tons of overlap in the kind of androgynous zone. And we also see that gender differences in voice start way before puberty does. 5, 6, 7, 8. That's when gendered differences in the vocal experience start coming up, and that's just cultural modeling. And those are the things that I was interested in kind of pursuing and tweaking too. And the kind of, I don't know, I got deep in the rabbit hole. I don't know if a lot of people need classically speaking, but it was a real help for me.
Oh no, this is another reason I went to 30 sessions is because Geek had found Geek. And we were like, oh yeah, you want to go there? Oh, I can go there. Let's go. And we would, look at weight and pressure and find these studies. Like Roz would find a study about the weight and pressure of tip of the tongue T's and fricatives and stop plosives, and how the weight and pressure of these speech sounds are going to give off on a spectrum of, that is a moniker for masculine versus feminine, all these studies. And we'd go through the study and deduct what we found helpful. And then you go, oh, so I don't want to talk about things like, let's say like a really firm speech precision and detail of T, D, N, and L. So I don't want to talk about that in a binary, even though there's this research that's showing that helps people be gendered in a certain way that's on that binary spectrum. I don't find that very useful in my work. What I find useful is to go, hey, have you ever experienced what it is to have this kind of speech detail and precision and make no apologies about it? A way to really say something clearly and stand in that clarity. What's that feel like to you? Does that feel euphoric? Different? Good, bad,
Right.
like qualitatively tell me more.
As opposed to masculine v feminine or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. And they're like,
Yeah.
holy cow, like, oh yeah, to speak in that way with that kind of detail is euphoric to me and gets me closer to that dream. And we'll work in that way.
Sorry, can you just clarify for me weight? You said weight and pressure, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Do you literally mean the amount of air pressure that I put behind my plosives, my P's, my D's, whatever it is? There are studies that can connect more pressure to a certain gender expression in voice.
Correct. Yeah. Well articulated.
Fascinating.
Well, I'll just say, I don't want to dip too much into this pond. There is a lot of stereotypical things and markers that we would recognize pretty quickly in that world. So that's why I, as quickly as possible, get out of the binary conversation with that. But this idea of, and I'll put it more into the terms of curiosity and openness. What is it to, in that speech sound, in a way that doesn't push someone away with that level of weight and pressure and precision, but is always, creating a bit more space, equal space in the room for someone else to come in and tell you what they think right after that. Opposed to, this is a statement and this is fact and true, next meeting. Right? Oh, wow, that has a certain vibe, opposed to a speech detail and precision. That's always, and even a lifting of pitch, which is sometimes seen as, I don't know, immature or young or not commanding. And I'm more interested in, all right, if you want to sound more femme, it's not about, I lift more things at the end of my sentences. That's an incredibly problematic and reductive way to look at it. But if we can look at it, what is it to end with a curiosity more consistently than a statement? We can dabble into some euphoria that's not so reductive.
And this JP, you just got me to remember the thing that I wanted to say to you, because that's so spot on. Because for someone doing this work too, like a cisgendered person who's never experienced any kind of vocal dysphoria, right? Like, you have access to such a wide vocal palette when it comes to your expression, and so much of it is subconscious. You're asking your boss for a raise, and you are not going to be using the same bubbly, fun voice that you will with the girls at brunch. Right. Like your voice is shaped so much by your interactions, and like by kind of escaping the gender, binary and the kind of boundaries that like that kind of vocal approach puts on things, you can start to ask really fun questions where it's like, okay, I want my voice to be read as feminine, but I also need to be able to have a really pointed and direct voice when I need it. You need to be able to access these things. And so what are the tools that get me there? What are the skills that get me there? How do I practice that as a habit? How do I do that so often that now it's just, okay, I just code switch into the other voice?
Yeah.
Or rather the other coloring, the other shader.
Which is the case with all of us, right? In any walk of life, in any kind of predicament or scenario, ultimately gaining access to your own anatomy and the tools by which you operate consciously and unconsciously. That's something we can all relate to in training for sure. I have a bit of a segue, Roz. What about the time in training? Like, what's the bridge from that to, I want to be a certified teacher? What was that bridge?
I think he said geek meets geek. I think that's pretty much the bridge.
Oh yeah. JP put it nicely with that, I say. That's an interesting question. I think that at a certain point working with JP, I just really it was that geek meet geek. Let me retake that. Editor, me in the future, cut that to make it perfect and beautiful all the time forever. Thank you. No, but it was that geek meet geek moment, right? And there was a point for me where I was like, okay, like I am reading scholarly articles about this subject. I am chasing down relatively obscure textbooks on different vocal placements and techniques and schools of thought. I'm looking at all the other vocal training systems and thinking to myself, like, why do I like the things I like from this approach to gender-affirming, like voice work? What do I find useful here? What do I think might be misguiding other people? those are all of the same questions I started asking myself when I decided to do grad school for literature, and start teaching in that area, right? Not just questions as someone who's doing this thing and experiencing it, but some questions from the perspective of the educator.
So you
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about it for sure.
But you kind of came at it from an already embedded educator DNA, right? One would say. And
Definitely.
so what are your hopes to do with this work once you're certified?
I don't. Well, yeah. Once I'm certified, once I'm knighted,
That's right.
I can officially go out there and freelance. No. I think if I could have anything, right? If I could have like one big thing for gender affirming voice work in general, it would be to create a condition where the next generation of gender affirming voice coaches and instructors kind of look back at the work that we're doing today and they're like, honey, you were trying, but that was so misguided. Like you advanced it, but we are so far beyond you now. To help as many people as I can find not only the voice that they're looking for, but the tools they need to kind of keep exploring and keep growing. So there's the big grandiose answer. The 10-cent answer is do what I love doing and get paid for it.
Interesting that I think there's DNA in there again of making yourself obsolete. You want to shift the paradigm enough that your contribution of it sort of becomes, maybe a moment in history, but it's in history. Well, my friends, how does that feels like a pretty reasonable place to put a pin in it. Any last little gems or thoughts anyone wants to throw in on this fascinating conversation?
No, so grateful for the time, for Roz, of course, for all the clients I've worked with in the history. I mean, truly, there's not one thing I said in this podcast or ever said to anyone that was original. I'm deeply inspired by people that were on this call. I mean, Scott, Kyle, and everyone at MVM and others. I'm so grateful that I'm able to speak in any capacity about this stuff and maybe help somebody. So feeling very grateful. And if people want to know more, they can go to chicagowomenshealthcenter.org/voice-coaching and find out there more.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And then find me, of course, through Miller Voice Method as well. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah. If you would like to get your hands on a little bit more of what MVM has to offer, you can visit us at millervoicemethod.com. We always have the presence training available, which is a sort of guided workout series, video series that you can practice new skills alongside. We will hopefully be running a new session of the MVM Gym, which is a twice weekly 1 hour live Zoom class where you can get instruction and feedback from an instructor. We don't know the dates on the spring session just yet, but check out millervoicemethod.com. And if you are one of these weird actor people who wants to work on voice stuff, Scott and I will be teaching a class in New York City, in Chelsea. Looks like it's going to be May 15th through 17th. A chance for you to develop your MVM skills. If you have no experience, that's fine. We're just looking for folks who are, professional actors looking to take their craft to the next level. Anything else we want to throw out there, Scott or Roz?
Not I.
No, just thank you for having me back. This is twice this month for me, so
yeah,
it's good to be on mic for these.
Yeah, it's a thrill. It's great to have you. Scott, any final words?
No. Thanks for the time and the looking at narratives and relationships and conduits and ways all these things that we're talking about actually relate to each and every one of us. If we can just kind of wipe away a little bit of our circumstantial lens and see beyond that, there's so much crossover of information that is available to each and every one of us. So I'm thankful for that.
Fabulous. All right, my friends, let's leave it there. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, listeners. And I'm sure that we'll have both of you back on at some point. So we'll see you again.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Later.
Thank you.
Bye, team.
Bye.